courageous. Wow, that should be in the dictionary. Hi, hello. Oh gosh, I've missed all of this, and we're having another book review, which I know I haven't done so long, and it's usually about books from series. And this one's no different, unless you just count like the fact that it's a trilogy. But anyway, today we'll be going over Divergent, which I regret not having the book here with me. It's so far away. Anyway, I have a notebook so I don't start ranting about random stuff, screaming. So, yeah, Divergent, I kind of ruined this for myself, like the book, because I watched the movie twice before I actually got to it. So that's great. And, fast forward, the book was still pretty interesting, which you'll hear about in just a second. Basically, Divergent is about a girl named Beatrice, who lives in this futuristic version of Chicago. In this futuristic version of Chicago, there are 5 factions. You have Dauntless, Abnegation, Candor, Amity, and Erudite. So basically, they are brave, selfless, courageous, selfish, peaceful, smart, and what's the last one? Oh, honest. Candor is honest. And she's basically kind of going through the world, making this dramatic choice when she's 16 to either stay with her own faction or join a different faction. So she goes from Abnegation to Dauntless, which is not much of a secret, and I think it might be on the back of the book. If not, I lied. Whoops. Okay, basically, I thought that the book was actually pretty interesting from the writing style. All the sentences are pretty easy to follow and they're really straightforward as well. It's fast-paced, to the point, but then if you actually get into the actual book, the way that the factions are set up, the differences between them are actually quite intriguing. And then you have the initiation ceremonies that come with the new initiates that choose to either stay or join that faction. We get a lot of the Dauntless initiation protocol, but we also learn about what happens in Candor and Abnegation, along with some of what happens in Erudite. The only faction that kind of goes unmentioned is Amity, as far as I know. And with that being said, I love just learning what happens to everyone. The first roughly 400 pages of Divergent is solely about learning how to fit the standards of Dauntless and what it means to become Dauntless, which Triss felt like she didn't have a problem with, because that's how what they favor has always been within her. And so she thought, oh yeah, Dauntless, easy. It's not easy. See, I like that, to be courageous. Wow, that should be in the dictionary. I like the fact that in this setting, to be courageous and brave, you must overcome your fears in probably one of the most traumatizing ways possible. So, you get sent into this simulation, yeah, in which it's almost like you're physically facing your fears, and you can kind of feel it. Oh yeah, you have a fear of drowning? Here, you go in this raging ocean, and it actually feels like you're drowning, which sucks. But then there's also, this idea that it's simulation. So, where does the title Divergent come in place? It's actually probably the most important thing ever, because to be a Divergent in this means that you don't have a place amongst any of the factions. You fit into multiple factions, and your mind works differently. And to be Divergent is very rare, and mainly comes from young Abnegation peoples. So Triss has to also battle with that. But this is also, it's quite interesting though, because while you get a bunch of what it means to be divergent, how terrible it is to be divergent, while at the same time kind of grappling to understand what divergent means and affects the lives of those who are that, it's crazy. It is honestly crazy, because it's just this whole conflict. It's an internal struggle and it's an external struggle. So you find that the government in some form, not the government, those who oppose the government also oppose being divergent, those who are divergent. And then those who are divergent have this internal struggle that comes with trying to figure out and understand what they are. And this leads to a lot of questions and a lot of unfulfillment. Kind of crazy. Okay. With that being said, everything that I liked about it, here comes some things that I found confusing, but, just could use a teeny bit of work. I found what the characters are doing, their actions, the structure of the buildings, if they were going upstairs, downstairs, I found that very confusing. It could have just been me, because I get distracted easily, and so I didn't follow what they were doing, but what the characters were actually experiencing, where they were, basically where they were moving around. I didn't get that. And I found the plot kind of see-through. It could just be because 2 years ago, when I wasn't thinking straight, I watched the movie. Could just be that. But it also comes with this idea that there are tons of hints, and it's super obvious, and I don't know if it's supposed to be. It probably is supposed to be super obvious. And here's where I'm going to get into spoilers. So for those of you who haven't completely read the books, or watched the movie at least, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So basically, spoilers. What was see-through? Oh yeah, the fact that her mom was dauntless. That was kind of straightforward, because as soon as the mom had anything to do with the ceremony, going to see Triss on visiting day, you knew it. There were just some subtle things that Triss was picking up on, but there were also things that she wasn't picking up on, that she was just observing and experiencing, that was so obvious. And maybe that was just a me thing. Yeah. And then you also had the description of Four's eyes and Marcus's son going to Dauntless. You also had those little hints. And so, obviously, 4 equals Tobias. I think that Veronica Roth wanted us to figure that out before Triss did. Because if you describe 4 having dark blue eyes, and you also have Marcus described having dark blue eyes, and then focusing on that singular trait throughout the entire book with just 4, and then you also have people hating on Marcus being a terrible father, and then also having people talk about, just Marcus's son leaving him to go join another faction, which you all know is entirely, I don't know, it's a loss to the faction when the 16-year-old leaves them or chooses to join another faction. So, yeah, it's just those hints that 4 was actually Tobias. We all knew it. Okay, last 3 things. The relationship between Triss and 4 was very forced. It wasn't rushed, not at all. But over 500 pages, with roughly 500 pages to make this relationship work, there was no way that Triss and 4 were ever supposed to get together with each other, or anyone else. Because Triss over here has a hard time believing in and understanding relationships. Love is not something that comes easily to her, especially when it's finding a partner. It doesn't click in her brain. It seems oddly unnecessary to her. And Tobias just has this guarded sense. He's very defensive, and kind of going with somebody else is not his thing. And he also has to focus on keeping his guard up, trying not to be something that could be threatening to everyone around him. So neither of them were the type of person to even remotely be in a relationship at all. So that's that. And then you also have Triss, who we all knew was supposed to be dauntless, and she was written like that from the very beginning. You know, people pick up on abnegation standards, like, especially, she was born in abnegation. She understands how they act, how they interact, but it was kind of forced for her to not be as selfless as those in abnegation. Like, she was supposed to become this great, dauntless person who is amazing and really works within that faction. But that also came off as forced to me, that Triss had this outcome, and she was written to have always had this outcome, not like she was just living her life. Because typically, you'd think that most people kind of pick up on the lifestyle around them and what they grew up in, especially if it's like faction lifestyle, and that's practically how everyone around you is. It's just the only time you interact with other people outside of these ideas is school. And even then, she's kind of been fine with being the outsider. So it just felt like the author was coming through more than the character, and it was more about the plot than it was our main character. So, yeah. And then the last thing that I found kind of rough was the fact that 4, being all of 18 years old, acted like he was close to 30 because he was super mature. He just had this distinct quality about him that is not one that an 18-year-old would have. But what am I to say? Who am I to say? I mean, 4 acted like he just acted like he was older than he was. And everything about him did not in any way signal 18 years old. Because the way he understood things, processed everything, the way he interacted with his environment, he was very logical, very thought out, very analytical. 4 was absolutely perfect at everything he did. And that's just not a quality that most people would have, being absolutely perfect. And it kind of felt like he was only created to become this partner to Triss that was different from from everything she's ever known. And so, yeah. It just helps to have, I guess, a character that is older than their ways. Which, if they would have said that he was in his 20s, I could totally believe that. Yeah. Anyway, Divergent was actually a great read. I'd stick around for mainly the plot than the characters, but it's still really fun to learn how Triss interacts with the world and how everything changes. And I'd like to get to know more about her brother and her friends. So hopefully Insurgent and Allegiant will definitely bring that. And yeah. Most people are either like, you love this book or you hate it, but there is totally an in-between. That's where I'm at. Like, I don't hate this book, and I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites. But this is definitely a great, intriguing series that anybody who likes well-thought-out universes or a good plot should enjoy. Thank you for joining me for this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!